Welcome back to the Elevate Your Call to Service podcast. We are on episode 50, which for us is a really big deal. It feels like a hard-fought battle to get this far and to get our 50th episode published and produced and out to you, our listeners. So we are so grateful to be here and so grateful that you have joined us on this journey. As we embark on our conversation today, we just want to take a look at the legacy side of leadership. We want our leaders who are listening, our listeners, to be able to reflect back on the impact that they're having, both now and in taking a long view of leadership. Mike has had a few tugs on his heart recently over the last several weeks, and I'll let him speak into that. But we just want to gather our wits and take a reflective stance on the way that leadership impacts others and the influence that you can have on others when you are a leader. And it's an influence that I think we underestimate as individual people. And I think that it goes so far beyond what we think it does. Who we impact and who we influence they go on to influence others and who influence others. And it becomes this generational impact. And we like to refer to that as a leadership legacy. And we just want to take a hard look at that today and help our listeners start to be more mindful of the legacy that they are leaving for others.
Yeah. And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's always, the New Year also is one of those times that brings reflection.
For sure.
About things that we're going to leave behind and things that we want to do better, in the new year, some of the things that we can work on. And, you're absolutely right. We've talked a little bit about two men who I've worked with in the past who have passed on. One just as recently as yesterday, and the other one was mid-December. And as I was sitting in the celebration service for the one that passed in mid-December, that whole legacy piece just kind of unfolded, right in front of my eyes as you're sitting in a service like that, because there's several people that get up and start talking about that impact that man had on their lives, and particularly on their leadership within that organization, and even outside of the organization that he worked for, just the impact that he had on the law enforcement community, and what a leader he was. And you start hearing, words like integrity. You start hearing words like honesty and kindness and fairness, and leadership in services like that. And it just brings back to mind how critically important it is as we're walking through our leadership journey that we keep that in mind, that what we do, what we say, how we act has an impact on the others around us. The other thing that we need to keep in mind is that can be a positive impact, and we really hope that it is, but it also can have a negative impact. And when you start to think about maybe that day, when people are talking about how you impacted them, you obviously want those words to be affirming, to be positive. And as I, reflect on the man that we just lost yesterday, or a couple of days ago, I got word yesterday. I immediately went back to, the time that I first met this man, and that I was part of his team, and he was one of my very first sergeants when I got to patrol. And just the profound impact that he had on a very young, impressionable young man, both as a father, both as, and also as a deputy sheriff that is serving the community in that area. And he worked or I had the opportunity to work with him for about 15 years before he retired. And he was always in a leadership role, kind of ahead of where I was at. He was a sergeant, I was a deputy. He became a lieutenant, I became a sergeant. So, he was always in a position of, from a rank structure, authority over me. I really got to feel his leadership, his impact in my life when I went to investigations. As a detective, he was the captain over investigations. And I got to see how he led in that kind of a role when, in investigations, in the cases that we worked, they're pretty important to our community.
For sure.
And very important to making sure that things are done right. And I would say, as I reflect, both of those men, they had that people first, people over project, people over the goals, because they knew that in order to accomplish the things that they wanted to accomplish, that we needed to accomplish, that it took the people in order to do it.
Yeah. And that's such a good, not necessarily a definition, but an overview of what it means to have a legacy where you are putting people over projects and you're really starting to be aware of and have an influence over what remains after the job is done. There's still people that are still going to be there. Like you said, you only worked for him with about 15 years and then he retired. So you still had a long career ahead of you without him, but his influence has impacted you for many, many years.
Yeah.
Even after his retirement.
Yeah, and still to this day.
And that's what a legacy is. In your career, help me understand what kinds of leadership moments that maybe seemed small, maybe insignificant, almost unworthy of notice in the moment, that became something bigger as time passed.
When I go back to the one that later became my captain, there was a time when on patrol, when he was my sergeant on patrol, one of the first cases that was a significant case. It was a burglary case, and I brought all of this information to him. I kind of laid out my plan, what it was that I was going to do. I had made an arrest, charges that I was going to file. And he sat and listened to me and was incredibly reaffirming in the direction that I was going. But he was also somebody who would offer guidance and direction. And it was because he had the experience. He had some wisdom in knowing what this would look like when it got to the district attorney's office, what it would look like in court. And being able to start explaining that to me, and I had, as a brand new deputy sheriff, I had no understanding of how that looked, the kind of the end game of all of that. And he took the time to walk through that with me, even to the point to where we had a little bit of a disagreement as to exactly what charges should be charged. And he said, I want you to file what you think, not what I think. But I want you to file what you think. And let's see how it plays out. I was blown away at that because he took the time to listen. He also was at that point kind of guiding and directing, but he also had that trust that he immediately demonstrated in me and gave me the confidence to move forward in that direction. And as it would turn out, it turned out exactly the way that he said it was going to turn out. But he allowed me to work through that and go with what my gut was so that I could kind of experience that.
And teaching you to start trusting your own gut. This is what I think. Okay, go with that. Let's Let's see how it plays out. The DA is going to be involved. There's a lot of steps ahead of you.
Right.
You don't have to make the final decision that's going to be a make or break on the case.
Right.
Let's go with what you think, and let's let it bounce back and forth for a little bit before we finally decide. And it's such an affirming exercise to know that somebody believes that you can make a decision and you're not being micromanaged, you're not being too heavily scrutinized. It's such an encouraging moment for you to grow and to become who you are as a leader,
Right.
instead of trying to emulate someone else. One of the things that you say a lot is that leadership is revealed over time. So this is a little bit of a glimpse of that, but what do you mean by that statement, that leadership is revealed over time?
Right. It's those patterns, those kind of habits, those expectations that others can have of that leader. When they have the opportunity to kind of know how that leader is going to respond, that gives them, again, kind of gives them that confidence that I know what to expect, because there's those patterns, and those patterns really matter more than just the moments. And then the consistency, again, it's that expectation in that consistency, that every time that leader is involved, there's consistency in that, whether it's that listening piece of it. That leader is going to listen to everything. That leader is going to empower for others to be able to do what it is that they think that they need to do. And even from the follower's perspective, from my perspective, I knew that there would have been a point where that captain, that sergeant, would say, can't go in that direction, because that could hinder the case, or that would violate one of the rules, in our statutes. It's being able to develop that relationship where that leader is going to kind of give you as much as you need, and really knows when to rein that in. And I'm kind of looking at you because there's that whole horse analogy, right? From a rider being on a horse, how much rein to give a horse, and you also know when you need to start even a gentle tug back. And when I think about leadership legacies that we want to leave, that's the kind of leader that we want to be.
And it goes hand in hand too with the leadership reputation that we've talked so often to our listeners about building. That consistency is such a key element to building your reputation. When somebody comes to you, they know what to expect. He's either going to jump all over me and micromanage and make me feel like an idiot, or he's going to encourage and really start to draw out the best in me. You start to become known for the type of responses that you offer the people who you're leading,
right,
and the people that you've taken under your wing. If you had a leader that you were sitting with and mentoring today who was interested in building their own legacy, intentionally, more intentionally than they are, because you will build a legacy whether you mean to or not. It's going to happen.
Absolutely.
But if you were mentoring somebody who wanted to become more intentional about building a positive, affirming, very influential legacy, how would that look like in today's world and today's leadership environment?
I have opportunities. Folks come to me at times and say, "Hey, will you coach me? Will you mentor me?" And really, it's setting aside the time to do that, and it is kind of putting everything else away, putting your phone away, getting out from behind your computer, sitting there with that individual, and then starting to ask those probing questions that you need to ask of that person. What it is that they want, what is their why, what is it that they want to accomplish. Really, it's that listening part, and then from that listening, working with them to come up with a plan, a goal, a target, a direction that they want to go, and then being able to resource them and encourage them, guide them, and direct them for them to be able to accomplish that. And when I think about a leader that wants to have that positive impact, they need to continually look to learn, but they also need to be looking for people that emulate those characteristics, those qualities, those traits that they want to then emulate in their profession.
And I think there's also a need for an awareness of the way that your words, your mannerisms, your approach, how that makes other people feel. When you can make someone feel like you believe in them and that you have confidence in what they're doing, they'll follow you
Right.
a long, long way.
Yeah.
Where if you make them feel stupid, or you make them feel insecure, or you make them feel like they will never know as much as you do, that's going to make them back off and back away. And again, you're leaving a legacy one way or the other. It's either positive or negative. What are you going to choose to do? And how intentional are you going to be about making someone know that you believe in them and start believing also in themselves?
Right. Yeah. That, to me, it's, again, it's the people side of all of that. It's building those relationships with those that you get the opportunity to influence, to lead. And if you're doing that right, then you're going to leave that legacy that is going to be a legacy that serves not only you well, because that's not the goal in all of this. The legacy that you want to leave is that impermeates, that influence gets into the DNA of that team, of those people, of that team, of that organization. And that's when we really start talking about the impact that a legacy can have in an organization.
One of the things that we've also talked about is the way that a leadership legacy can impact more than just your life in the workplace. You can, as a leader, if you want to have a positive impact on the people that you're leading, it does go beyond what happens in the workplace. It also translates to how things go at home, or in their personal relationships, or in their personal activities. There's so much more to influencing a person than just what goes on. I want to say 9 to 5, but that's not your work life at all.
Right.
But it does go well beyond what happens at work.
Yeah. And that's the other reflective piece. You know, when I think about those that have gone on, you know, some of them have done that very well, not just left a good legacy in the workplace, but they also have that good legacy, that great impact on their family, or in their community, or in their church, just by the way that they lead in different areas of their life. It's so important that it isn't just, you know, we jump in the car, we're driving to work, and we flip that switch on, and now, you know,
We're going to be a leader now.
We're going to be a leader. And then as we're driving home, we get to flip the switch off, and we're not any longer, right? But you're so right. It goes so much further than the 9 to 5. And I would say that it's really hard to have a lasting positive leadership legacy at work if that isn't part of all of your entire life, right? Because it would be hard to just be on for, you know, those 10, 12 hours that you're at work, and then, you know, not live that type of life when you're not.
I know that we have listeners right now who are thinking to themselves, wow, I've really already blown it. I've really made some big mistakes in the way that I've led people or tried to lead people. And I can think back on a situation when I was in the workplace long, long, long time ago, and it did not go well. And I had a huge conflict with a person that I worked with, and it still to this day, it stings my heart. It's embarrassing to me. Like, how could you have behaved that way, Cathy? You were just high and mighty. And I can still look back, all these years later and really criticize myself for that. But I grew from it. I moved on. I got better. It really helped mold and shape me. So if you have a listener right now, how would you speak to them about encouraging them, even though they're very aware of the mistakes that they've made and the ways that they've fallen short?
Your legacy's not fixed.
Mm.
It isn't fixed until the day that you're done.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's so important to remember, that, there's course correction that can happen, and that course correction will have an impact. It will absolutely matter. It's, we say in Abel or in Heroes that it's never too late to do the right thing. So the same thing, the same principle applies, right? It's never too late to lead better. In fact,
good.
I'm kind of one of those that likes to always seek out ways of leading better, doing better. Or how do I learn more? How do I read more? How do I, we were just talking about, having that type of structure in our system to where we're constantly learning. And then I also think that it's important to reflect on your leadership style in your methods, and where that course correction needs to be made, then make it. I know, because I've had to walk through it, in times that I've had to make course correction. There's always that fear that, does this feel like it's disingenuous? And it is disingenuous if you're not making that course correction from the heart, if that's not where you really want to go. If you're just doing that to try to impress others, then that's going to come across disingenuous, because it is disingenuous.
Mm-hmm.
If you truly want to make those course corrections, if you truly want to get better, people are going to see that. And you also have to be open and honest with them that, and maybe that means you go back and you apologize. Hey, I was headed in this direction, and, that was not the best direction to go. And I'm trying to change that. And would you help me? Would you, I bring an accountability partner alongside.
I think too, anytime we try to change our behavior, there's going to be people that are looking from the outside in thinking, the worst about it. They're just trying to look good, or maybe they're up for a promotion, or, whatever. And they're just going to kind of chirp about that. And that's a natural thing, whether they do it to your face or not, because they don't trust you. But the more that you can uphold that new behavior, the more that you can practice it, the more that you can show that it really is the real you that you want to be, the more they will start trusting you in it. So if you walk into work on Monday and you've got all these goals and plans that you want to do, and you just start chipping away at some of those, there will be some naysayers.
Yeah.
But stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually over time, they'll see, oh my gosh, this is really working out. He's really kind of turning over a new leaf, or she's really doing some good work here. And that's where you want to be. So don't expect the new trust right off the bat,
right,
but also be willing to invest in it and work at it so that it comes naturally to the people that you lead.
I would also say, when you have the opportunity to come alongside somebody that wants to have that course correction, be their champion. Encourage them to go through that. Let them know what it is that you're seeing. Be affirming. And if they start to deviate off of that again and going back to, call them on it, right? I mean, gently, kindly, but say, hey, you told me this is where you want to be. You're moving off course a little bit. Let's refocus there. But if you have the opportunity to do that, to walk alongside somebody, wow, it's an honor to be able to do something like that. You learn so much about yourself and about them and about leadership, about trust, about people. It's a great experience.
That's good. And we're going to, already coming up to the end of the episode, which is so shocking, but we're going to move into the challenge. So if you could outline some simple leadership commitment that you would encourage our listeners to do this week, how does that look?
Again, I think that it's being present. And when you're present, you're paying attention to what's going on. So it isn't just the physical, hey, I'm here, but it's, hey, I'm here and I'm listening. I'm with you. What do you need from me as a leader? The other thing that I would say, when you get an opportunity, speak some affirmation into people. Speak words of encouragement into people. It is amazing when I look back at times that people have just said encouraging things, how that just reinforces the fact that what I'm doing, one, matters, and what I'm doing is not going unnoticed. So it's so important to be able to speak those words of encouragement intentionally. And I would also say that as much as you can, be reflective on that. The things that I do are building that legacy, right? And what do I want that to look like at the end?
What do you want to be remembered for?
Right. You took me through a process, a practice. I don't know. It's probably 4 or 5 years ago now. And you phrased it, I want you to write your eulogy and what you want people to say about you.
At your funeral. We had to rework that and say, okay, let's work on your retirement.
Because I was not about talking about my funeral yet. But yeah, I mean, when you think about what would you want people to say at your retirement party about you, and you actually write that out, what you want people to say, who you were, things that maybe you accomplished, that gives you an opportunity to start building into that legacy with that end in mind. And I know that it's really, I have difficulty with when we talk about the end in mind. I like to look at it as the goal in mind, the
long view. We're taking the long view.
The long view. Yeah. When you start to think about what that is, then you can make those proper course adjustments now so that you can hit that target when that day comes.
Well, and when you proclaim what you want to happen, when you write a goal down, when you write your ambition down, when you start to speak it out loud, you start to own it, you start to internalize it, and you start to gradually take steps to make it so.
Yeah.
Don't keep it a secret.
It's powerful.
It's incredibly powerful. And there is no magic to it, but it is very psychologically sound that when you start working towards something, if you speak it, you say it, you write it, you share it, you have such a much better chance of making it come to fruition and making it matter for the lives that you're touching.
Well, and you get to realize what sacrifices do I need to make, and are they worth making those sacrifices? So then you can adjust it. If it's, nope, I'm not making that sacrifice to get to that goal. If if we wanted to say, you know, I want $1 million in the bank, you know, you can make that happen.
You can.
What sacrifices are you willing to make to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to realize some of those, it's like, no, you know, maybe 450,000 will be, you know, will be good enough, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's that risk reward. But really, what do you want your legacy to be?
Mm-hmm.
And start working it, because you're not gonna, if you don't think about that, then you're left with whatever it is at the end, and you may hit it and you may not. But if you want to ensure that people say certain things about you, and the impact that you had on them, because if we're service-driven leaders, it's about that positive impact that we have on others. We have to know what we want them to say so that we can live that life along the way as much as we possibly can.
Such a great way to have a positive, lasting, and I love the word generational. It's a generational impact, both in the workplace and at home. I know that you are still greatly influenced by leaders that you met in the Navy. We've talked about that recently on a podcast. That was a lot of years ago.
It was, unfortunately, a lot of years.
To this day, some of the methods and the encouragement that you received way back then still matters to you. And not only does it matter to you, it has shaped the way that you lead other people and how they lead other people. And this is the generational impact that I'm talking about. We have that power and we have that ability. We can choose to misuse it, or we can choose to use it for good. And that's what we're all about.
Right.
Let's use it for good. Right. Let's maximize that potential, and let's get out there and help people around you be the best that they can possibly be for the sake of their communities, their families, and the officers that they work with.
Yeah.